Welcome back, everyone, to the Unclassified Podcast. We are here today on a special episode because the United States has struck Iran's nuclear program and perhaps entering the Israeli-Iranian conflict. And I'm joined here today with Preston Stewart, the pride and joy of the show.
Hey.
Preston,
Right.
How's it going?
Good, man. Chaotic night. Yeah. We know a fair amount right now. I feel like there's still a lot of unknown that we're glossing over and kind of just assuming the best. But this is going to be a pretty chaotic, probably 24 to 72 hours, I'd say.
Without a doubt. And so, to give everyone a recap, if you have not seen the news yet, the United States last night sent, is it 6 or 8 B-2 Spirit bombers, stealth bombers, and they flew straight from Missouri through the Strait of Hormuz over the Mediterranean, entered over Israel, and then hit Iran's 3 nuclear power plants, the big one being Fordow, which is in a mountain. They dropped 12 massive ordnance penetrators from the GBU-57, and there are mixed damage assessments that we're going to get into, but they did that, and then they got out, and President Trump truthed it to let everyone know, and then he had a televised address, and so Preston, initial reactions here.
Yeah,
to this,
let me run through. So the Pentagon folks
give
are
us a rundown.
Yeah, the Pentagon folks are speaking my language. So let me run through my understanding of the operation so far. So Operation Midnight Thunder or Midnight Hammer, excuse me. I could have gone with Thunder too. Midnight Hammer is the name of the operation, which means we're naming operations nicely again. This is good. I like that. So Midnight Hammer kicked off Friday around midnight into the early morning of Saturday in U.S. Central Time. 7 B-2 bombers departed the United States heading east. Around the same time, 6 B-2 bombers departed the same airbase going west. Those ones moving west were highly tracked. The public was watching those. The OSINT guys on Twitter were following their every step. I saw people predict, based off of their flight patterns, this is the time window they'll arrive over Fordow. It was crazy. So everybody was kind of watching those 6. Meanwhile, 7 bombers with minimal communications, a couple of refueling operations, flew east in what would be the longest B-2 strike mission since 2001. 18 hours to target, multiple refueling operations mid-flight. When they came over land, they were joined by U.S. 4th and 5th generation fighter aircraft to escort them into Iranian airspace. Israel was not involved from everything we know at this point. They were made aware. There was airspace deconfliction, but all aircraft involved in this strike operation were United States. So approximately 12:30 a.m., so just after midnight, Iran time, a U.S. submarine in the region fired 24 on or about Tomahawk missiles at a handful of the facilities. And we did see some reports about this, strangely enough. Randomly, we are getting a report of a single explosion here or there at a guard tower, and then an explosion at a random facility near Isfahan, and it was unusual. At 2:10, the first bombs fell on target. The first B-52 came in. Let me back up a little bit. After the Tomahawks started hitting some of the locations around the nuclear sites, the next move was those U.S. 4th and 5th generation fighters, likely F-22s and F-35s, moved into Iranian airspace ahead of the B-2s and began preemptive strikes, destruction, and or suppression of Iranian air defense assets. So they started hitting radar sites, missile launch locations, anything that Israel probably had identified in recent days, if not already destroyed. Anything that turned its radar on likely caught a missile. After that, U.S. B-2s arrived overhead, completely undetected by all accounts. Doesn't appear that they were identified at all. From the U.S. side, says there was not a single round fired at U.S. aircraft throughout the entirety of this operation. B-2s arrived overhead. The first impacts of the GBU-57, those are the 30,000-pound bunker busters, impacted on target at 2:10 a.m. By 2:35 a.m., all 3 sites had been hit with 14 total massive ordnance penetrators. So in a 25-minute window, 14 of these giant bombs, this is the first operational use, were dropped on 3 different targets across Iran. The aircraft then began exiting the airspace as more Tomahawks flew from that submarine, striking additional targets in Iran, and the B-2s exited, escorted back across land, and are, my understanding right now, still in flight back to the United States. That's about what we know right now. We can get into battle damage assessment and everything, but that appears to be the gist of the operation. I think 75 total munitions used in this strike.
Wow. It's very impressive that they were not picked up once. Or at least so they claim. I mean, we don't know.
By Iranian
but yeah.
Air defense, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew that they were going to have a hard time at baseline with B-2s. This is something that's been an interesting conversation in recent days. Thanks, Israel. You guys have made this look so easy by going in and just dismantling the Iranian air defense network. It's given us, I believe, a false sense of security in assuming that airspace in a lot of areas is uncontested. And we knew that Iran, or expected that Iran would have a very hard time with not just F-35s, because they've had a hard time with Israeli F-35s, but certainly would have a hard time with our B-2s. But no matter what you think of that, Iran is one of the most heavily protected airspaces in the world, and you're talking about putting bombers overhead enemy territory. There's nothing safe about that at all. It's a risk from the moment they go in. And we're doing a really good job. The air power is doing a really, really good job. The Air Force did a really, really good job with the planning and the execution of this one. It's wild that they didn't get anything off, the Iranians.
Without a doubt, yeah. And what's even crazier is that because of that internet blackout and everything, I mean, you didn't even hear reports of explosions. I mean, as far as I could tell, all I saw was Israel hitting air defense targets in the southern part of the country earlier.
Yeah,
that was about it.
In touch with a couple folks in Iran that are sending up civilians, just saying, like, here's what I'm seeing, here's what's going on, and not a single one of them mentioned anything about airstrikes at these facilities. The only thing was at that 12:30 point when a couple Tomahawks started impacting, there were reports of commando raids, which didn't take very long to say. This doesn't seem very genuine, but it was essentially tipping the hand that something was going on, something different, something that they weren't expecting. But across Iran, from what I can tell, the first indication of this happening, at least to the public, was President Trump's statements.
I think that's correct, yeah.
Clean on OPSEC, Ben. Clean on OPSEC.
It was very clean.
There's been a lot of celebration today around what a wonderful operation where OPSEC was maintained start to finish. Just to be clear, that's the norm. That is the expectation. I saw somebody say, like, this is like congratulating a toddler for not, or your child for not wetting the bed. It's like, at some point, this is what is expected. So good. No leaks.
Not even your toddler. It's like congratulating your 15-year-old.
Toddler is a bad example.
Yeah. But that's absolutely nuts. So the battle damage assessment, what are we looking at here?
This is, all right, I'm going to get some blowback on this. I'm ready for it. Here we go. This is a lot of source, trust me, bro, kind of stuff. Now, I trust the United States government over Iran, over Russia, and it's not close. But when we look at the imagery, and Ben, if we have a chance, it might be worth, I can share some, maybe put it up on the screen during the upload.
Yeah.
It's satellite imagery from today that just shows holes in some of these locations. Because these penetrators, remember, they were designed to not impact on the surface or even a few meters underground, but as many as 200 to 300 feet below the surface. So the battle damage assessment we have right now is holes in the ground that look precise, looks like they hit right where they wanted to. General Kane at the press briefing this morning. Now, President Trump last night, and we're going to have to, I really like General Kane for what it's worth at this point. He's coming across very professional.
Like
yeah. I never had any opinion one way or the other of the guy, but just in the first few interactions I've seen, like, I like this dude. I can call him a dude now because I'm not in the Army anymore, so he can be a dude.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. But his statement I really liked. He said, quote, "I know that battle damage assessment is of great interest. Battle damage will take some time, but initial assessments indicate that all three sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction." And here's the challenge. Any of the damage and destruction is below ground. We're spoiled in looking at, Russian air bases or warships out at sea, and you can see the smoke in the distance. From what I can tell at this point, Nothing has been caved in, clearly caved in from the satellite imagery. There's no smoke emanating from the facility. But look, those bombs are designed to go down into the middle of the structure and detonate. So, like, genuinely, the bomb could have penetrated into the opening, the open hall in Fordo, detonated, and destroyed everything 100%. It also could have detonated short of where it needed to go and not have had the desired results. We just don't have any detailed information on that right now. And it sounds like, again, the reason I kind of like General Kane is he's saying we need to give it some time. We hit where we wanted to hit, and now they're kind of waiting to verify that that good effects were had.
Without a doubt, the U.S. Officials are telling the New York Times that Fordo is not completely destroyed, but perhaps severely damaged. The first indicator that perhaps it wasn't fully destroyed was from Israeli Army radio, which said that there was a chance that it was not destroyed. Like you said, we don't know what that means. I'm not going to lie to you, Preston, or to the viewers. When I heard they dropped 12 MOPS, these 15-ton bombs, I thought the mountain would be gone. I thought it would just kind of look like Mount St. Helens, when it blew its top in the volcanic eruption.
Yeah.
That's not what happened. No, we just have like 6 entry holes and
look like ant holes, right? From
like ant holes. Yeah, I kind of thought it would just be a giant hole in the ground, but I guess that's not how it works. And so it'll be interesting to see what comes of it. The Iranians claim it's cosmetic, and I've seen the Russians or Dmitry Mendiev say it's cosmetic as well. We'll see. I'm inclined to believe the U.S. military and that it is severely damaged, but like you said, we won't know till.
So something to think about is we see those holes that go down into the surface of this mountain, and there's no clear detonation damage or explosive damage around that hole. An explosion happened, assuming those bombs actually detonated, right? Sometimes, unfortunately, bombs fall and they don't detonate. It happens. But in this case, assuming those bombs detonated, that explosion had to go somewhere. And the fact that the top of the mountain is still sitting there means that it didn't just go straight up. So that detonation dissipated somewhere below ground, most likely. And the hope is that it, took out its anger inside of the actual nuclear facility.
Let's hope. Do you think with the ISR and the infrared imagery coming out that only shows one plume out of Fordo, do you think that is a sign that maybe all 6 didn't go off? Or not all 6, all 12?
I don't think we can read into any of that, honestly.
Okay, yeah. So how do you think the Iranians respond?
Well, before getting into that, I think there's a couple other issues here that we should talk about, which is this was a very successful military operation. It was very risky. It was historic. It was incredibly carried out, no doubt. But even if, and we're talking about we don't know the battle damage assessment yet, but even if every one of those facilities is wiped off the face of the earth, that is not the end of the Iranian nuclear program.
No.
They still have enriched uranium. There is some speculation. Iranian media in recent days has been saying we've been evacuating these facilities because we're not stupid, and we know that strikes are probably coming at some point. That doesn't sound like the craziest thing in the world. We know that they have dispersed enrichment facilities and storage locations across the country. They don't have one spot. So again, even if the entire facility is completely gone, that's an important step, no doubt. But we know that Iran also has enriched uranium up to 60%. Was that all destroyed in this strike, or has any of that been moved? I don't know. There were lines of trucks going to Fordo 2 days ago. What got moved in those trucks? Was it stuff coming in? Was it a lot of stuff going out, right? We know that a lot of the top nuclear scientists have been killed, but not all of the nuclear scientists have been killed. That knowledge base is still there. We know that Israel is going after some of the centrifuge production facilities, but in terms of rebuilding this capability, Iran still has it today. So again, even a 100% successful strike, Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordo off the face of the earth, nothing recoverable. That alone does not eliminate the Iranian nuclear program. There are still steps to be had, be it military, kinetic, or at the negotiating table.
I fully agree. I also think that if we did not get enough nuclear material or enough of the parts of the nuclear material, and they're allegedly so close, I worry that they will develop one quite soon. If anything, we just gave them the exact reason to do so. The one thing that is striking to me about the strikes is that there, as far as I can tell, there has been no legal justification laid out for them. I'm not saying they were illegal or unconstitutional. I don't know. But usually when these strikes happen, they say, well, we use the Authorization of Military Force from 2001 or the War Powers Act or whatever. Have you seen any of that? I don't. As far as I know, I have not.
Secretary Hegseth started to talk to that today because he was asked at the press briefing, did you notify congressional leaders? And he said after. He said as the aircraft were exiting the airspace, they notified, and he said in accordance with the regulation or something. He started to go down that path. Personally, morally, this is where I struggle a little bit because I think that the goal here was valid. I think it's a good goal to have. But there's the legal side of this that's been a challenge since 2001. We've been operating under this AUMF, the Authorization for the Use of Military Force, and it just kind of allows the president to do whatever, whenever. I don't think that's probably a good thing, and admittedly, I run up against kind of a wall, and I think this is why it's probably stayed around as long as it has, is that when the president wants that power, and then they use it for things that their party agrees with, and then there's no incentive to change it. But yeah, it'd be nice to probably relook the whole legality situation around this.
Yeah, you're right about the Authorization of Military Force. When Obama, when the whole thing with Syria was going on, the Syrian civil war at the beginning, and the gassing of civilians, Obama went to Congress. He said, "I need you to give me this authority," because they kept calling on him to do something. And they said, "You already have that authority in the Authorization of Military Force in 2001." He said, "No, I don't." And they said, "Yes, you do." So he said, "All right, well," and then that's how that happened.
To me. Yeah.
They continue to do that, whether it's Libya or with the IRGC last year. That seems to be, you're right, catch-all for everything. It will be interesting. I mean, you are seeing people in Congress say this is unconstitutional or whatever. I don't know. I do think, though, it shows what members of Congress know how to read the Constitution, which ones don't. Because if you read in Article 2 of the President's powers, it says the President can declare war if he announces it on Truth Social a few minutes afterwards. So...
Hey, listen, nobody said war.
That's
Hegseth
right.
was pushed on this. What about larger military operation? Negative. This was a what was the exact term he used? Something along the lines of this was a limited scope operation. War is not a term being used by anyone at this point, and I think that's deliberate.
Except the New York Times.
Oh, yeah.
Very
right
bravely
away.
ran
Right
with it.
away.
I was like, wow, okay.
Now we see where they're coming down on this one, yeah.
Yeah, they're very mild and everything. I mean, Los Angeles could be nuked, and they'd say, Los Angeles dealing with some radiation.
Summer heat wave?
So, yeah, heat wave, yes. So, Iran they say they will retaliate, and there are quite a few ways they could. There was news that broke that the Iranian parliament said that they could shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which, for viewers who don't know, is a choke point in shipping that I think most of the world's oil comes through out of the Persian Gulf there. Did we call it the Persian Gulf still, or I thought we renamed it to the Arabian Gulf or something? I don't know.
I'm good with either. I can't keep
track. So they say they're going to close it down. They've also said they'll strike U.S. bases. We will see. The Houthis have said that the ceasefire with the Americans is over and that they'll go back to striking American things. And we also have the militias in Iraq who are, they're a mixed bag. There's a bunch of guys being dudes over there. Some of them are downplaying it and they're like, oh, whatever, doesn't matter. Others are saying it's war. For most of them, it's like 4 guys together on a truck. And if they can get off work, I'm sure we'll see some attacks, but otherwise, I don't know. So it's an interesting battle space. I mean, as far as I know, we haven't heard from Lebanon's Hezbollah yet. Have you heard anything out of them? I know Hamas condemned the attacks, which everyone was waiting to hear from, with their press secretary, wherever he's at. Maybe he's at Columbia University. But have you heard anything out of Lebanon's Hezbollah?
I'm looking up Hezbollah right now. They're just quoting the IRGC. They're living vicariously through the branch of the axis of resistance that still has fighting capability. I'm joking. Hezbollah still has pretty significant. A good argument I heard against Hezbollah getting involved recently was, so Hezbollah's fight would be against Israel, right? Just given their location, not a lot of U.S. military assets they would be able to target super effectively. And when they were in a fight with Israel recently, it's always been, hey, we're protecting the Lebanese people against Israel. And they took a lot of losses, a lot of destruction in southern Israel or southern Lebanon. And it sounds like there might not be a lot of domestic support for, we're going to risk this again, all of southern Lebanon again, but this time for Iran. Because there's a little bit of like, wait, what? Who are you? What does that have to... We just want to go back. Stop, man. We just want to live. So haven't heard much from Hezbollah. They do have some capabilities still. The Houthis are the big one to watch. I've been thinking in recent days, the Houthis are like kind of secretly the winner in all of this in so many ways. Like, we carried out one wave of airstrikes against Iran, and apparently we were able to destroy their underground nuclear facilities. We hit the Houthis for like 2 months straight, consistently under this administration. And the last administration was more standoffish, but went on for a bit longer. They're still there, man. All of their leadership is still there.
Yeah, they're like this. They're like a permanent side character. You know?
It's crazy. Yeah. But like they're fighting the same people. They're fighting the same people that were fighting Hezbollah and Hamas and the militias and Iran, and the Houthis by and large are doing fine right now. I mean, yeah, as far as Houthis go.
Well, I think what's happened to Iran is a good tale. And before I say this, I want to say I'm not inferring anything about Israel or the United States here, but it is a good tale and appeasement that after 10/7, my understanding is that Iran had some role in that. If the rest of the IRGC and Iran and Hezbollah and the Houthis all had attacked Israel while they were attacking Hamas, Iran's nuclear program does not get bombed. But instead, they all just sat around and got picked off one by one by Israel, and eventually Iran's the last man standing, and there's no one there to do your business, There's no Hezbollah deterrent. There's no Hamas. I mean, you have the Houthis, but, they're just guys, so...
On that note, actually, and I got some thoughts on the proxy forces and the Iranian threat.
Yes.
We need to dig in deep to the Iranian threat. But
yes.
Yesterday, Israel announced that they killed Saeed Azadi, who is the coordinator between the IRGC Quds Force and Hamas, and they tied him directly to helping to coordinate the October 7th attack. So that strike yesterday for Israel was very symbolic, very, very important to take that person off the battlefield. But let's get back into the Iranian threat. What's going to happen now? Because I think that's the big question. And personally, I think that is the question. United States may go back in. We may not. If it looks anything like it did last night, it's a dangerous mission, no doubt, but not the risk that it would have been a few weeks, certainly a few months ago. To me, the big question is, what does Iran do in response? And there's a few different ways to look at this. We don't know the state of the Iranian regime right now. Or do they feel like they're on the brink? And if they do feel like they're on the brink, are they more likely to negotiate and find a way out and appease everybody to stay in power? Or are they most likely to go all in and risk self-destruction? And we don't know. But a couple thoughts here. First and foremost, Iran does still have a significant amount of short and medium-range ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, similar to what they used against U.S. bases in Iraq after the killing of Soleimani. They went after a U.S. base that time, not with their militias, but coming directly from Iran, because they wanted to send a message. You attack Iran, we're going to attack you. And generally what we've seen with these proxy forces is it's kind of a proxy war, right? Their proxy forces, they fire rockets at one proxy group, sends rockets at a U.S. base, we hit another one, that kind of stuff. Soleimani pulled it out to U.S. versus Iran. I would expect something similar here to kind of showcase that they're standing up for Iran and for the people and the facilities in this case that have been destroyed. They do have a lot of missiles that could strike U.S. bases in the region. And the U.S. is prepared for this, or knows, I'm not saying anything that nobody's getting ready for. By all accounts, all U.S. forces across the region are on high alert. We've seen the reallocation of defensive assets like Patriot batteries and short-range rockets to shoot down drones in recent weeks. We've seen aircraft and ships be kind of moved around a little bit to avoid making them easier targets. Combat air patrols being flown over U.S. bases in the region on the lookout for things like this. That is 100% a very real threat. Then the proxy forces is another one. Again, I think there's a possibility that happens. Iran is going to want to hit back themselves if they can. But of course, by doing that, they open themselves up for direct retaliation. The proxy forces, though, don't have the same capabilities, mostly. We do believe in recent years, and we've seen this with both Hezbollah and the Houthis, they have started to provide their proxies with more advanced weaponry. It's no longer just AKs and RPGs. These guys have cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. So there's a question of what have they provided the militias in Iraq? And do they have some of their more advanced capabilities that actually could do serious damage to the U.S. bases there? So the proxy one is a big question. You mentioned the Houthis already talking about we're back at it. I would expect to see a Houthi strike against U.S. forces in the next 24 hours. If we don't, I'd be very surprised if that doesn't happen. And then the largest, kind of most capable militia in Iraq, Kataib Hezbollah, has threatened the United States as well. 2 days ago, they said if the United States gets involved, we will directly attack the United States. So I think it's a matter of 12, 24, 36 hours maybe. It would be shocking if there was no response at all here.
I fully agree. I am expecting the worst. My understanding is that the U.S. intelligence assessment, ranges from absolutely nothing happening to like a dirty bomb. They have no clue how they will respond. What's interesting about the proxies is that I would not be surprised if they just don't pick up the phone, or maybe they say we're going to do something and don't. Iran kind of just let them hang out to dry the past year or so. And it's going to be interesting. I think if they shut down the Strait of Hormuz, U.S. officials have now started to signal about that, saying it'll be the end of the Iranian regime. I think they do it. I think they fully go for it. And I also think there's been a level of downplaying by the administration where they say, well, we just hit the nuclear programs. We've created the conditions for peace now. And so Iran should make peace. I'm sure that's great domestic messaging, but that's not really how that works. Iran, this is a two-party conflict. Iran does get a say in it, and I don't think they're going to go into the night quietly. I think they're going to mine the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know if they'll fire at U.S. bases. My understanding is that most of the bases in the Gulf have been evacuated, and that they're all at Prince Sultan in, what is it called, Saudi Arabia.
I don't have any information about evacuations. The last I saw was that all bases are at full operational capacity. So
the one in Qatar and the one in Kuwait have been emptied. I don't know if that means all the soldiers are gone, but I know that means
so. I don't think that's we got a lot of people there. That would have been a pretty significant effort.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I have seen the movement of platforms, air platforms, and civilians have been offered to relocate, but maybe I just haven't seen that. But I'd be surprised if we evacuated some of those. Those are relatively permanent locations that we have,
Yeah, absolutely. Strangely enough, we saw Qatar take their own air assets out of their own country and store them in Turkey for a little bit while this all blows over, which is kind of crazy, but, it is what it is. And interestingly, we have not heard anything from friend of the show, Jolani, from Al-Shara. Over in Syria, he does not have anything to say about Iran or the United States, apparently. And that's interesting, right? Oh,
I have an interesting one to add here, too. Talking to someone in Iran yesterday, in Tehran, he said he has a friend that works in the hospitals and was able to get there recently and said that they're at normal capacity. Everybody that's there is, it's a car accident, it's high fever, it's scheduled surgery. It's not people caught up in the bombings. Now, there's a lot of hospitals across Tehran, no doubt, but there's also been a lot of strikes across Tehran. And what that kind of points to is, like, look, no doubt there are civilian casualties in any campaign. But that would suggest that there's not like an overwhelming amount of civilians being even wounded in some of these Israeli strikes. I thought that was really interesting.
It is very interesting. We saw that Iran called for an emergency UN Security Council meeting, and they will get it today. We've also saw that the Iranian foreign minister is in Russia as well. What is Iran doing here? It seems like they were almost kind of caught off guard. At one point, they say they're going to pursue legal action. The other times, they say it's war. There doesn't seem to be a clear direction.
I would not want to be so. You spend too much time online, like you and I do, and you see all the crazy arguments in every direction. Like a third of Israel has been burned down, which is crazy, given that we have like live feeds of Tel Aviv right now.
Right.
But there's been some pretty wild takes, and look, Iranian missiles are still getting through and impacting in Israel. There was a pretty significant strike overnight. It's crazy to be living through that. I can't imagine what it's like having to deal with that, running down to shelters nonstop. Israel's in a much, much better position right now than Iran. Iran is like, it's hard to, you have to end up with some mental gymnastics to get to the point of where Iran is really playing. Like, the best I can come up with, I'm really trying to steelman this, is Iran is trying to wait out Israel because it's expensive for Israel to continue carrying out long-range strikes into Iranian territory, and they're going to sit on some of their longer-range missiles and then just pepper Israel, 3 a day for the next 6 months or something. But in the meantime, the Iranian leadership and military infrastructure is getting just completely destroyed. So that's a very difficult strategy to pursue. On top of that, they've now lost at least probably a degree of their nuclear facilities. They've got no allies, no major allies set to come to their aid that we can tell at this point. I think my gut says it's deteriorating faster than Iran expected. They probably expected to be able to have dealt stronger blows against Israel at this point, did not expect that Israel would have air superiority at the 48-hour mark, and probably did not expect the United States would be involved in the conflict this quickly. So I think that's why you're seeing some push on the international stage. It might end up kind of tying into their I don't know if they're going to mine the Strait of Hormuz. I wouldn't be surprised if they use drones like the Houthis did down at Bab el-Mandeb Strait.
Yeah.
It's much, you get to decide then which target are we going to hit or not hit, and kind of make it seem like you're allowing certain things through. It's like a lesser blockade, if you will. But that could be used for international pressure, and it seems like more and more that's what Iran is leaning on. That, of course, is not knowing what they have at their disposal and what lengths they'd be willing to go to preserve the regime.
It is, yeah. I think you're right that they think they can wait out Israel. I also think they think that they can. Like, to them, the U.S., they can kind of bait Trump into a land war. Or not bait him, but I think they don't think he'll do it. And I also don't think he'll do it. And so I think on their end, the calculation on what to do here kind of revolves around that. What do you think?
I don't know. It's been an interesting...
Okay.
Well, it's been an interesting... You're almost getting into the domestic politics side of things there, right? Like, what direction?
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting because good luck. We've watched very strong supporters of President Trump argue against anything like this, and then overnight celebrating how wonderfully successful it was. So I don't know. Again, my gut says that Trump does not want to get into a prolonged fight. I don't know that anybody really wants to, honestly. But I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of veers away from anything that starts moving us in that direction. The first thing he said last night was this: now it's peace, right? Like, hey, we hit you. Now it's time for peace.
That's crazy. That one was crazy. I don't know. I know, like, they're trying to brand it as, all right, we struck this and it's peace, and now anything that comes back at us is war. And they keep telling Iran not to respond. But in 2020, I think Trump did the same approach, telling Iran not to respond. But privately, they acknowledged Iran's right to respond. And what we saw was they bombarded a U.S. base in Iraq, and there were no U.S. soldier deaths, but there were casualties. A lot of them have traumatic brain trauma. But this was, to a certain extent, covered up to diffuse the conflict. And I wonder if they will go about it the same way this time around, where they go back and forth, but it's highly orchestrated, because we know that the U.S. did call ahead to Iran to let them know that we were striking the nuclear facilities and nothing
really?
more. Yes, we did, apparently, allegedly, reportedly, call ahead to let them know we would be striking the nuclear facilities and that our goal is not regime change. And then I don't know how in advance that call was. I don't know if the call is like while the bombs are falling or if it's like a day beforehand. I don't know. But that call was made, and so I wonder if we will see a telegraphed Iranian strike back. It's going to be very interesting. And then, there was talk among U.S. officials that Israel would hold back on strikes now and to give peace a chance. But my understanding is that Israelis are telling Channel 12, no, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep striking Iran. And then, of course, Iran hits Israel again. And I think we hypothesized last week that Iran was testing the air defense missiles with the 3 to 4 at a time. Mm-hmm. I think that's right. 1/3 of the missiles launched last night hit an actual target. So I think they have figured out a way. And at a certain point in Haifa, they had strikes hit Israel without sounding off an alarm or a red alert or anything. So I think they've found gaps in that air defense, and I wonder if those gaps also apply to U.S. bases in the area, given that the U.S. is using THAAD to help protect Israel.
Not an easy comparison to make, just because, if the coverage area, what they're focused on, what assets are in a certain area, it's not going to be as simple as that THAAD is here and THAAD is there, ipso facto, we found a way through. It could be, if they found a way to defeat certain U.S. platforms. But a benefit that Iran has right now is they've launched a lot of munitions, over 400 missiles or something at Israel. And technically, from each one of those, they should be able to discern some degree of data. They don't have that around Al Asad Air Base or, air bases in the Gulf, things like that. So I think that's about what we have right now. I'm seeing if there's more updates coming across. Nothing major. I think the big thing we need to wait on right now is see what Iran does in response.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see. And you're right. As far as I know, we don't have anything like that. We just have security alert for the UAE and Lebanon and security alerts in U.S. cities right now. But other than that, nothing all that much. What do you make of this Iranian network that they're talking about that they're calling them sleeper agents? It sounds like some Cold War stuff. Yeah. Do you think this is real, or do you think this is what's going on here?
There is a thing there. Iran has recruited Westerners. I don't know that I would necessarily call them sleepers. That's impossible to prove, right? That there's somebody here that has been co-opted by Iran or the IRGC over the years, and we're just waiting for them. So take your guess. Seems on the surface like it wouldn't be the craziest thing to do ever. Do you ever watch Americans? What a show.
Yeah, that's the one where they're spies, right?
They're the sleeper agents, right? They get activated. Yeah, what a show. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like that's something an adversary would do. What we have seen Iran do in recent years is recruit our undesirables, if you will. They go after career criminals and recruit them into assassination jobs. They tend to not be, the ones that have been arrested at least, there's been talk of going after political figures, but generally they're targeting regime dissidents and Iranians that have moved to the United States. So and their contacts are with the IRGC. So they're, but these people, they're not ideologically motivated. It's like hitmen that they're hiring. There was one, I think it was Iran. They hired a guy that was led a motorcycle gang in Germany or something to attack a synagogue, if I remember right. Like, the guy had no ideological motivations. It was just he's getting paid money to attack an enemy of Iran. That exists. Now, to the degree that exists, I don't know. And it's something that the FBI has been watching because they've picked up a handful of these folks over the years.
I saw that, they've been trying to assassinate Trump now for 5 years or so. And Trump said that if they assassinate me, I left instructions behind on what to do, which I thought was funny for him to say that. But also, I mean, do you think they'll actually be successful in that endeavor? I don't think so.
In assassinating the president?
Yeah. I mean, they've been trying for a while now, and they haven't really.
I mean, I feel like the smart money there is no, right? That's the
right. Well, I guess you're right.
Like
He's still alive. Yeah.
Heavy odds.
I guess you're right. Yeah. So, no, you're 100% right. So, I guess unless you have anything else you'd like to add here.
Let's wrap it. I'm going to get back into the research. I'm trying to keep an eye on things here. It doesn't seem like anything drastic has happened in recent hours. Folks are starting to hit the Sunday shows, talking about it. Nothing drastic coming out of that quite yet, but we'll see. The day is still young. Give it another 12 hours. We'll probably we'll see what the night brings.
Yeah, you guys might hear from us tomorrow, depending on what happens. Inshallah. But guys, remember to like, comment, subscribe, give us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple. We will see you Friday. Hopefully not earlier. If you hear from us earlier, it's usually a bad sign, right? It's usually we don't ever come on here and say, well, we're just so happy we're giving you an extra show. No, we come on here because there's death and destruction, poverty and famine. But we will see you all Friday.